Okay, we're now live on YouTube, so welcome everyone, both on Zoom with us and on YouTube Live. We're very, very excited to have you with us today for this very special event with IRO. So we're in the studio with Bhavya Goenka and her team as part of our Fashion Open Studio for COP26 programme, which is a partnership with the British Council as part of the Climate Connection cultural programme at COP26. So COP26, the UN's climate conference, started on Sunday in Glasgow, and we'll be taking a series of events that will pop up in community spaces and studios to Glasgow. If you're going to be in Glasgow at COP, please come and say hello to us. Between the 5th and the 7th, our programme is on our website, which is fashionopenstudio.com/events. And that programme responds to two of the COP26 themes, which are nature and adaptation and resilience, which I think you'll see in Bhavya's work. Her work holistically and inherently responds to these two things. Bhavya's studio is embedded in a factory in Jaipur, and it has a unique circular model looking at recovering waste from that factory space and investing in local artisanal and weaving communities to produce new fabrics and new product. We're really excited to be taking the step with Bhavya today into a new space for her, which is open sourcing some of the solutions that she's found. She's going to be showing us some zero waste cutting techniques that are very much embedded in Indian tradition, but she's also created a manual to open source these so that you can make your own IRO at home. You can buy a pack, which means that you can make your own IRO garment using IRO fabrics, and we'll post the link for where you can purchase those. But if you aren't able to purchase, or you have some materials you'd like to use, Bhavya's also made a manual available that you can make this at home from any materials that you like. So we're super excited to kick off this open source method with Bhavya, and she's going to be showing us how they developed it, what it looks like. So we welcome you into the process. I'd like to say a very big thank you to our partners and people who have made this possible. So I'd like to thank British Council India, and British Council Global teams, and also our team in India, Fashion Revolution India, in particular Suki and Alia, for their endless support of Fashion Open Studio, and of course our own team here, which I think we have on the line: Tamsin, the curator of Fashion Open Studio, Ursula, the creative director, and my colleague Nikki Allen, who's been project managing. So huge thank you to everyone who's made it possible. But without further ado, I'll pass over to Bhavya to start us off. We're going to be sharing some films, but I think we'll say a quick hello first to Bhavya in the studio.
Hi, I'd also like to introduce the people who would be working with me on this project today and who worked on this project. So we've got our Master Ji, whose name is Rakesh Ji, and Sita Ramji, and they'd be guiding us through the workshop today. So this is Rakesh Ji.
Hello.
Hello.
And this is Sita Ramji. And Sita Ramji would be tailoring everything for us today. And Rakesh Ji would be cutting everything for us today. And yes, this is a garment factory. This is where, this has been a garment factory for the last 15 years. And we've been manufacturing for Japan mostly. And that is the waste I've been using as IRO. Okay.
So Bhavya, are we ready to screen beautiful films?
Yes.
Great. So first I'd like to introduce a film that Bhavya has made in partnership with Lakme Fashion Week. which shows the 0 to IRO collection in motion. So there you can see the collection itself, and next we're going to move to showing you the process behind it, which is very much the spirit of Fashion Open Studio. So I'm going to share another video. Those are also being hosted on YouTube, so I'll post the link if you want to share it or you want to watch back later. You'll be able to do that on YouTube.
हमें और कपड़े बनाने की ज़रूरत क्यों है? Why do we even need to make more clothes? Someone answered this well. So long as someone is wearing clothes and someone else is making profits of it, people will continue to buy fashion. present as IRO is making sure that the right person is making profit while making these clothes and textiles. And that our fashion appreciates the nature and the human condition that resides in it, instead of, just exploiting the environment.
It's as though you were walking down one street, and for no reason at all, you change your mind and walk down another. But you don't always know how important those things are until you let them go by. And you have to pay, any woman does, with an awful lot. The trip would be dangerous to you and someone very near and dear to you. Just leave it to him. So that'll be all right, John. Thank you. I've always loved you, but now I like you too, very much. It may be sound very selfish, but it isn't that. You do understand. The beauty isn't it? It may be sound very selfish. I've always loved you, but now I like you too, very much.
IRO is also a way for us and our friends to rebel and voice our rebellion against the current systems of oppression and exploitation. We simply ask, can we slow down? Can we find it in ourselves to listen, to love?
So, huge round of applause. Fabio and the team. We're now going to be transported into the studio in Jaipur, and Bhavya and her team are going to show the process in more detail. I'm going to post a few links in the chat so people can follow along with the manual that Bhavya has made and the films that we've just watched as well. So over to you, Bhavya.
Okay, thank you so much, Neve, and thank you so much, Nikki, and of course the whole Fashion Revolution and Fashion Open Studio team for hosting us today. We are very excited to share the process. So we made 3 basic jackets this time, following the zero waste concepts. One is sew it yourself, second is button it yourself, and the third is knot it yourself. Sewing is something that is not as democratic as it used to be. So we also built mechanisms of buttoning a jacket up and knotting a jacket up so that people who are not familiar with sewing or might not have the time to learn it, can still invest in making a jacket for themselves. So first we are going to start with how we came up with the pattern of buttoning it yourself, the jacket that we made for buttoning it yourself. We call it Paheli. That means a puzzle in Hindi. And yeah, now we are going to show you the pattern of it. And that's going to be showcased by Rakesh ji. So we are going to start with the process. So this is the pattern that we had developed. Now what happens is, just because we are following these lines, so it contains a zero waste essence, and we use all of this as for like binding the fabric inside.
Please.
He's making sure that everything is marked at the right precise point, because all of this weaving is placement weaving. So these particular spots where everything is woven in a way that it falls on your body at a particular aspect. So something will fall on the side seam, something will fall on the shoulder, something will fall on your back. So all the weaving has also happened after we've designed the zero waste pattern, so as to place the particular motifs on the body itself, instead of planning it later. So right now we are just marking the pattern. Now he's gonna cut it. So this becomes the shoulder line, this becomes the neckline, this becomes the shoulder line, and this becomes the shoulder line. And this area acts as the pocket that we patch it on the jacket.
Yes.
So now he's marked it for pleating. It is really up to you. If you see the manual, it is really up to you how much you take in for the pleat. The pleat would really dictate the shoulder width of the garment. So this width of the garment is going to be dictated by how much you take inside the pleat. But it needs to be equal to, so if you're taking in 4 inches at the back, you need to take in 2 inches from each side in the front. So this, if this is going to be 4 inches, then this needs to be 2 inches and this needs to be 2 inches. And this he's going to use for piping and for other things.
Just to say, if you have any questions for Bhavya and the team, please,
Yes, please.
pop them in the chat or pop your hand up and we'll come to you. So as we go through the process and see us, we've got one from Tamsin here. Tamsin, do you want to unmute yourself and ask?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, hi. Yeah, I was just interested, Bhavya, in the patterns on the fabric, the stripes and the colors. Can you tell us how you got them there and why they're placed where they're placed?
So there is this really interesting art form in India called tantric art, and it's a way for the people who practice this art form. It's a way for them to make intangible something that is tangible, and that they do via painting the images they have while they meditate. So it's an abstract art form. And when I was studying art, I was always told that abstract art came from the West. But when I engaged with the communities here and I saw this art form and I saw how other art forms in India also developed throughout centuries, I realized that this way of painting has always existed in India, and I found it quite beautiful. And so it just became for us a way to reclaim and say that, this kind of an art form has really existed in India, but also to say, like, I find beauty in it, that when you close your eyes and you stop your thought process, you get a certain image in your head. I like the idea of drawing it down and kind of seeing where it goes. So we practice this with our weavers, and these are motifs that they came up with in their practice.
Thanks, Bhavya. That's so interesting.
We have another question. From Pam, just elaborating on that, is what was the name of the art form used for the motifs? Can you spell it and I'll put it in the chat?
Yeah, tantric art, Tantra, tantric, Tantra art. Yes, that's right.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bhavya. Any other questions for Bhavya and the team as they work away? I'm going to show you up close on the big screen.
I've got a question, Bhavya.
Oh, please go ahead.
Bhavya, I wanted to know, of course, the fabric which you're weaving is woven in such a beautiful way, but over here, if we have to use scraps and create something similar by getting to zero waste ourselves, is there anything which you think we can do from our end?
Where are you based out of, if I may ask?
So we are in South London, and I'm from India originally, of course.
Right.
And I'm here now. Yes.
I would say, though I'm not an expert at zero waste living, I am still learning a lot about it. What I found in my learning is localizing our practice helps. So whatever you can find in your local communities, because I feel, especially in a space like London, there would be spaces that upcycle a lot of things. And if you check out Fashion Open Studios website, you'll find a lot of upcyclists, and you'd find a lot of people who also collect scraps, as far as I know. So yeah, definitely there are ways to do that. I think Neve or somebody based in London would be able to answer this question better than me.
Yeah, I think I might bring in Ursula if she's there, who is a South London resident. But yeah, following on what Bhavya said, I guess it's looking at what the skills are around you, whether they're knitters, weavers. Yeah, Ursula, are you there? Do you want to say a bit about South London particularly? Maybe not.
And I can give a little bit more context. Essentially, it's because I am from India and I understand how ingrained the practices of patchwork and putting together, using as little fabric as possible. Over here, we're trying to create a factory which cuts garments on demand. So instead of having stock, you kind of make it yourself. And some of the patterns, well, all the patterns which we have right now are not zero waste. And so we've got a lot of scraps. And my dilemma is in the, it's the cost of patchworking here. As you're saying, things have to be contextual and we have to solve problems here. The cost of working with scraps is so high. We've done a particular project around using bits of it and we're trying to develop more things. But I wanted to understand if there's things which you do in your studio apart from weaving in a
making this smaller and smaller offcuts still usable. Bhavya, do you want to answer that? Maybe we can also, I can pick out a couple of examples of Fashion Open Studio designers who work with smaller and smaller offcuts that might be an inspiration to look at.
Yeah, sure. What we do is we make buttons like these, with like the smallest offcuts, and generally we are able to weave in the smaller offcuts as well, because if you can see here, we didn't need a big offcut here. We needed a very small offcut to weave this in the weft. So yeah, for us, it's like finding solutions through design, whether it's making buttons, whether it is weaving, whether it is patchwork, or placing it in a way that looks like a beautiful pocket, or making a new surface out of it, like a coaster or a surface for home. We find solutions through that. But I would also encourage you to look up the designers in UK.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth mentioning a few people from our cohort. Tamsin, do you want to say a bit about Elvis and Chrissy? And then I'll mention a few from our international cohort as well.
Yes, sorry, just unmuting. I was just putting a link there. Yeah, Elvis and Cressy, I think are interesting just because, well, they mainly work with all waste materials, but the work they do with leather in particular is really interesting. They rescue offcuts of leather and they end up with really tiny little bits, like literally it's barely bigger than a postage stamp. And they've created this system where the pieces are stamped out in two different shapes, and they interlock with each other, a bit like kind of textile Lego. But it means that they can create large pieces of material, but using very small offcuts. And, you know, and the end result is actually really beautiful. And also, like this that Barbie is doing, it means that people can actually buy kits of the little offcuts, and they can make the material themselves. It takes quite a long time, but obviously it's less expensive. Yeah.
Yeah, and a few that I could mention from the cohort. Actually, one of the other designers within the COP26 program, Huna, has been thinking of this in her studio. She works with upcycled sailcloth, and she has smaller and smaller offcuts from the studio that she's starting to make into things like keychains, smaller accessories, smaller kind of components for her bags. There's a few denim designers who I think, you know, kind of working with how to make different material solutions from smaller and smaller offcuts. We'll be seeing on Friday Toton from Indonesia, who works with pre-consumer denim waste from factories in Jakarta that can be both quite large pieces that can be cut and you know, kind of used as different pattern pieces or then patchwork. But he's also working with things like fraying techniques with the smaller and smaller pieces. Again, you know, as you mentioned, you have the labor costs of that, but there's, you know, a number of different kind of textiles coming out of the same material. And then I'd also say it's worth looking at a couple of years ago, I think now, we worked with a Vietnamese brand called Moi Dien, who did a lovely studio tour of their studio, and they have a very specific kind of sorting technique. So they sort all of their offcuts from the studio to then be able to create different fabrics or finishings. I mean, one that's used a lot is kind of using offcuts as bias tape and other types of finishing, where you've got very thin offcuts, or you've got, you know, quite small offcuts like Bhavya was saying for buttons. It's also worth having a look at Phoebe English's work as well. So in her own studio, she's retaining all of her waste. She's bringing back her waste from factories and suppliers that she's working with, and then using it as the basis for her next collection. So there is quite a lot of textile development and trying to find solutions within the UK. So Phoebe's manufacturing in the UK should definitely be a good person to have a look at what she's doing, same as Elvis and Cressy. I hope that's helpful. And oh, thank you, Pam. So Pam has posted a resource called Cut My Coat, which is a Canadian publication looking at historical info for different clothing patterns. As Bhavya has explained, and maybe we'll come back to Bhavya now around this, this project's very much initiated from the heritage of zero waste cutting in India. And maybe Bhavya, you can just elaborate on that a little bit more.
Sure. First, though, Rakesh, would like to explain how, like, he'll finish off the jacket, if that's okay.
Amazing. Yes, please.
So he'll put that patch here, and then he'll stitch it, and then he'll add buttons there, and over there as well on the other shoulder. This he'll use as the piping, and what we cut from the fabric, he's gonna use as the pocket. So this is now ready to go into stitching. Up later. Yes. So as far the zero waste patterns are concerned, we've also referred to Cut My Coat a lot, because the way they've done the documentation, it's really inspiring. And so what we did was we went to different villages and we documented different zero waste practices that are still going on in those villages. And what what we found was that zero waste practices are a living culture in India, and not something that needs to be revived. It needs to be documented. So all of these zero waste patterns that we are making today, even at the studio, are something that are being already made in the villages as Indian costumes, and every community has its own costume. So there's this, I'll give you an example of, there's this one community of women called Meena women in Rajasthan, and in the region of Akola. And what they do is they collect twigs from the forest. And because they need to collect twigs from the forest, their skirts need to be really strong. So their skirts, are cut through zero waste pattern cutting technique. They use a 9-meter long fabric to make that skirt, zero waste skirt, and they dye it in a natural polymer called gone. That makes the skirt very strong. So it lasts 9 years, at least 9 years. And what they do is very rough work with it. So that way, all zero waste patterns and all kind of craft practices of India also find function with respect to what kind of a profession a person might have.
Thank you, Bhavya. It's so fascinating, I think, to hear you describe, often people kind of think of some of these things as, innovative. They'll describe them as like new practices, but as you're saying, they're embedded in cultures and communities and have been there for thousands of years. I'd like to bring in Ursula De Castro, founder of Fashion Revolution and Fashion Open Studio she's back with us, to talk about this idea of localism and circularity and upcycling, disassembly. So why localism is so important to those practices?
Well, for me, the importance of localism really is because of the heritage and the reality that before we could export and become global, we needed to really understand what it was like to be local. I mean, for me, the idea that the wood that was on a land determined the instruments that you could make and fabricate, which in turn determined the weave of the fiber as much as the animal did, and that it's all joined in this kind of, I call it soil and soul, but those two things really go together. And it is really about your own personal heritage and what is available around your corners. It's this kind of foraging that I find fascinating. But for me, the importance of it now is because basically in terms of globalization, we've been going, our ticket has been one way. So it's from us to the rest of the world. And in fact, I feel that we've been in the West at least regressing rather than progressing, because there's so much that we're leaving behind. In our search to innovate, to, be bigger, have more. And so at this moment in time, all localisms are important because they can teach us, in a way, something new. I mean, I refer particularly to, for instance, mending and repairing, which is a skill that in the West is nearly gone, in certain areas worse than others, but like UK, is horrendous, really mad, massive exodus in Germany. But in other places in the world, it's a skills that is alive and meaningful. And so why not turn the table around and learn from where this is still effective and functional? And because from localism, you learn something every day. I mean, I had no idea around this functionality and usefulness of the zero waste. Sometimes we imagine zero waste as being something almost simplistic. I don't have the time to cut. And yet it does develop from something different. It's to do with how you inhabit and speed and reaching places and using things for such a long time. I love that 9 meters, 9 years. In fact, Bhavya, when I'm writing my second book, I might have to come back to this story for you. And when it comes to language, I would like to, maybe today, and this is not the place, but we do really need to be careful with what we use, because things aren't necessarily about circularity. They may be about a more circular approach or circular thinking. But for me, what we are primarily discussing here and within the groups and the cohort at Fashion Revolution is not much more linked with longevity. And we need to make a clear distinction between circularity and longevity. One is quite chemical, quite invasive in itself. And another one is really instinctive, innate, and, you know, the fruit of our own wisdom. And we often use the two in the wrong context. So I think that's an important conversation, but maybe not for now. But I'm loving, and in fact, if I can talk about longevity, I just spotted in your film, Bavia, one of the trims, the girl making the pattern was actually the same material as I have on my favorite bag that you sent me as packaging, actually.
Yes.
So there you go. I mean, you know, this is years and years of me knowing Bavia, years since I received that bag, and there comes that print, which is completely unforgettable to my eye, and how lovely it was to see it.
I'm so glad. Thank you so much, Ursula.
I'm so proud of you, Bavia. Thank you so much for all of the work that you do. It is rigorous. It is excellent. It is important. We're very proud to have you in our cohort and part of Fashion Revolution India. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm not putting my video on. I promise you, I am not videoable this morning. I'm in my kind of, you know, total wild granny phase, but I'm here.
Bavia, shall we come back to just this next stage of the...
Sure. So after stitching the jacket up, it needs to be buttoned up. So now we'll button up the jacket. So after it's been stitched, what essentially the manual would also tell you to do, is that after you've attached the pocket, to attach the 3 buttons here and give it 3 buttonholes, and then button them up. So without buttoning it up, it's just fabric with pleats. The moment you button it up, it becomes a jacket. So if anyone has questions regarding this, we can take them up, or we can move on to the next process.
We do have some questions. We have a question from Maureen George in the chat. Maureen, do you want to ask it out loud? Do you want me to read it out for you?
I can say it quickly. Thank you.
Amazing.
Hi, Bavia. How are you?
Hi, Maureen. I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Lovely video, very inspiring. Question for you: are the garments one size, so that you're avoiding making a lot of sizes and waste, and obviously then the returns are lower? So that was my question. Thank you.
So in this particular jacket, the sizing happens through the pleats. So if a person says that they want a small size, we just take more fabric in and pleat it more. And if they want a bigger size, we take in less fabric. So that way it's inclusive as well. And we don't have to stock up on unnecessary, like we don't need to make too many the same variations. We just need to make fabric. And if we receive an order in a certain size, we make that certain size.
Brilliant. Because the fact that you're saving on that is also meaning we are saving when we're trying to sell the garment, and we can explain that, you know, one size kind of fits all, which is what we want. It's brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen.
And another question from Tamsin as well.
Yes, I was interested in finding a bit more about the technique that you're using around zero waste. Do the pieces all fit within a particular width or length of fabric? And are these techniques, is it traditional for you? Where does this technique come from?
Right. So they do fit a certain width, but we get to decide that width because we are weaving our own fabric. So that means we have a lot of room to kind of play. This particular technique is actually, I would say, combination of two crafts that have existed in India. One would be this. Just a second. One would be this. So this is rag weaving. It probably used to happen in like all parts. It has been happening in Japan as well in isolation. It has been happening in India as well, where people would just weave in rags to make a rug. And this would be sold at peanuts in the streets in India. And the second technique I use here is extra weft, where we've used the waste as extra weft over here. So that's called pattu, and it's indigenous to Rajasthan. So it's a combination of two crafts coming together, but then making a completely new craft practice in that essence.
Great, thank you.
Should we move on to the next process?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're ready to.
Yes.
Oh, Bhavya, we just lost you there. I think your audio's turned off. So I'm just going to ask you to.
Yeah.
Okay.
इधर काट रहे हो आप इधर So now he's making this jacket, which is the knotted jacket. This time, in this jacket, we finished it and we used, binded it. And in the weaving, this time we left it, we left a few wefts out so that we can give tassels on the edges. And all of these motifs, they're coming from this textile designer also I'm working with, Aditi. And they're also coming from the weavers we work with, because they decide what stays in the weaving and what doesn't. And they also draw their own motifs.
Bhavya, while we're having a look at this process, I wondered maybe we can have a chat about, this kind of principle of open sourcing and of replication.
Yes.
Because I think, within the themes of COP, there are some designers practice that respond very much to nature. And I think, the part of it's sometimes a bit harder to think about what adaptation and resilience means within the fashion system. But I think the open sourcing and replicability of what you're doing is very much an adaptive way of thinking about fashion. And yeah, I wondered if you could say a bit about what brought you to this solution and what you hope happens with it.
So we really started IRO with the thought that we need to reuse waste that the factory that I have been working with is producing. This garment factory we should be able to make their apparel manufacturing system circular. But the second thought was we need to take opportunities of income to the villages instead of having people move here. So really, that is when the seed of decentralized development was planted, I guess, inside my head, and I started researching on it. And of course, Ursula's words were very encouraging in that. But also going ahead, what I found was that, yes, we are developing a model of decentralized development in our value chain. And yes, we've been able to achieve a lot through it. But what's happening is the way we sell our garments is still the same. There's nothing changed about it. So how can we make it so that the people who wear these garments are also engaged in the process of making them? And that's where the thought of making our zero waste patterns like a jigsaw puzzle really came into play, because jigsaw puzzle is something I guess most of the people would have done in their childhood, or even might be making right now with their children. And it just becomes an activity that you can also practice through your family, with your family. And it becomes an activity that allows you to discover a process or discover knowledge through the lens of curiosity rather than guilt or something else.
Yeah, and using that intuitive process of a jigsaw, it's already something that people understand. And so maybe seems more accessible and less intimidating as well.
Yes.
Do we have any questions for Bhavya and the team at this stage? I can see things are starting to come together on screen, starting to maybe look more like a garment. Yeah, anyone got a question or a comment for Bhavya?
So what we do is we'll pleat it over here like this, so that when worn, it has more of a shape for the wearer as well. So we just add 2 pleats like this on either side, and there's an overlap here. And again with offcuts waist, this kind of offcuts waist, we make it into side panels for knotting. So what we end up with, and these of course would be finished off as tassels in this piece, which we are all very excited to see. But what we end up with is this. Once finished, it'll look like this. We add buttons here again. These are made from those offcuts. This is the material that Ursula had spotted, from which we'd made her bag for packaging. We had some of this still left, so we used it here as well.
Yes, it's so cute.
But I really must, I mean, this is really amazing, Ursula, how you spotted this material. And so when you close up this jacket, so this is how you close it up, and then you knot it on the sides. इधर आप लोग काट लगा दो. So from this, we get this jacket. And hanger. And this is how it looks when done. My idea was that to give it side panels so that there is more room for movement, as seen in the footage of dance, for someone to see. We can take up questions if anyone has questions regarding this particular pattern.
Any questions? I wonder, maybe Bhavya, we can hear from your team a little bit, if we translate, if you're able to translate.
Sure.
Actually, first we've got a question from Maureen about the dyes that you're using, the pigment. I'm wondering if you're using natural dyes for the colored elements in your work.
We generally use natural dyes, but for this particular collection, actually, we haven't dyed anything. So these are waste yarns that the weavers had in their homes, because these are all khadi yarns, and these are weavers who used to work for khadi. So we just upcycle those yarns, and they are undyed. This is all waste. So this was already in this color when we received it, when we sorted it out. And this again was already printed in this color, and and the print was already there on the fabric before we used it. So all of these colors were already there. We generally use natural dyes. In the collection, we've also developed a few pieces from something that resembles a denim. And for that, we've used natural indigo, and we've also upcycled dead stock fabric, not dead stock, but experiments of an artist, block printing artist. And she had yardages of experimentation. So we've also used that. So yeah, you'd be able to see that on Ikevi.
Wonderful, thank you, Bhavya. But yeah, maybe we can ask your team a little bit about working with IRO, kind of what their reflections are of the brand and the work that you guys do.
Sure. राकेश जी, ये लोग आपसे पूछ रहे हैं और सीताराम जी आपसे पूछ रहे हैं, अपन जो कचरे के साथ नया बनाते हैं, फैब्रिक बनाते हैं, उसके साथ काम करने का आपका कैसा रहा, अनुभव कैसा रहा?
अच्छा, very good.
नहीं, but और भी तो कुछ अच्छा. They are saying good, but I'm just asking them if they have anything more to say. आपको कुछ और कहना है कि कैसा रहा, कि अपन इतने कतरन डालते हैं जमीन पर, फिर उसके बाद उसका नया वो बनता है, फैब्रिक बनता है, आपको कैसा लगता है उस बारे में? Rakesh is saying very difficult. So yeah. Should we move on to the third pattern, Neve?
Yes, please. That would be great.
Okay. अपन अब तीसरा वो लगा लेते हैं. हाँ, उसको बस पहले फैब्रिक की जैसा अपन कर लेंगे. हो रहा. पर आप लोगों को ऐसे कुछ कहना है तो आप बता सकते हो कि क्या. पता नहीं. नहीं, सही बात है, ठीक है. पहले इसको कपड़े की जैसे लगा दो, जैसे एक कपड़ा बन रहा है.
निकाल दीजिए, सिलाई खोल दीजिए.
हाँ हाँ बिल्कुल. So we are first unpuzzling the pieces into a zero waste pattern, then we'll puzzle it into a jacket. So that's how the fabric came when it came from the loom. We cut it from here. आप लोगों ने ऐसे कचरे से और क्या चीजें बनती हुई देखी है अपने आसपास? So Rakesh is saying that he's seen flow mats being made from waste. I asked him what else he's seen in his environment made from waste. Uske upar, so they sit on it instead of using it as a flow rug. उत्तर आएगा हाँ ये अच्छा हाँ नहीं वो ऐसे ही था मास्टर जी हाँ और ये ऐसे है वो देना हाँ ये ऐसे है किनारियां है हाँ ठीक है कोई आप पर इसको भी ऐसे करना और इसको ये तो उधर हाँ गुड है हाँ कोई बात नहीं so this was the fabric when it came this all we used for finishing the jacket and giving it pockets and everything else and now the pattern kind of looks like the improvised pattern it looks like this yes So now we can puzzle it into a jacket. If anyone has any questions as we are going along, please feel free to ask. अब इसकी वो उसका लेआउट कर देते हैं जैसे अपन ने कल उसके लिए करा था जैकेट के लिए
बनाना है
हाँ
ये लेना आपके
If anyone has questions for the team as well, please feel free to ask. सीताराम जी आपको कितने साल हो गए कारीगरी का काम करते हुए 10 साल के ऊपर हो गए So Sitaram ji has been working as a tailor for more than 10 years. So he has a lot of expertise in that field. So feel free to ask him questions. So those would become sleeves. What Rakesh ji and Sitaram ji are folding would become sleeves. And what Sitaram ji is placing, now Rakesh ji is placing would become the hood, part of the hood.
I have a hand up from Paula, so I think she has a question. Paula, do you want to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask a question? I'm just going to press to ask you to unmute.
आप इसको स्टिच कर देना सीताराम जी, थोड़ा थोड़ा स्टार्ट कर देना, हुड वगैरह स्टिच कर दो.
Paula, if you're not able to unmute and you've got a question, perhaps pop it in the chat.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to thank so much. I'm really super fascinated. Thank you so much, Bhavya. Thank you to the team. And I really wish I could continue to watch, but I am looking after my parents, and I have to take my mom to care. So I just really wanted to thank and not leaving the chat without having thanked. And yeah, of course, I'm looking so forward to try the pattern out myself, of course, and to continue to collaborate. I can't wait to come to India. It's not so easy at the moment, but I'm looking super forward. So really, thank you, Bhavya. Thank you to the team, and thank you to Fashion Evolution and Fashion Revolution Studio. Have a wonderful continuation. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you for joining us, and you can catch to the end on our YouTube channel, so you won't miss anything.
Yes.
To watch it back.
I will. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Paula.
Thank you, Bhavya. Thank you.
We'll take this piece into. Yeah.
Yes.
So we'll take this piece into stitching में लगा देते हैं. So now Sitaram ji will stitch it. ले लो. Hood और sleeve ले लो सबसे पहले आप. आपको नहीं अच्छा लग रहा क्या? तस्वीर खिंच रही है सीताराम जी. So the pieces, when they reach the kit, when it reaches the customer, it is already overlocked. So they can hand sew it so that it doesn't fray, or they can machine sew it if they have the machine. And if they want to learn hand sewing, we can also hold a workshop for that. Please feel free to ask questions to the team or to me, anyone, or regarding any of the processes displayed so far. आपको वो जैकेट देखनी है? नहीं? नहीं, एक बार कच्चा सिल दो, पूरा पीस ही सिल लेंगे, हो जाएगा क्या सीताराम जी? पूरा है ना, पूरा पीस सिल लेंगे. कच्चा
I have a question, Bhavya, for you and the team, which is about how you divide the roles in your in your studio. So, you know, between tailoring and sewing, and obviously you work with weavers, but, you know, is there interchange between the roles so that people understand each other's processes and skills, or yeah, how does it work within your team?
So because this is a garment factory as well, so the roles are very well defined of what people are doing where. But when it comes to us, like what we are trying to do here in the factory, roles are very interchangeable. Sometimes Rakesh is acting like the designer because I'm taking a lot of his advice on how to make things zero waste or how to make things more functional and wearable. And Sitaramji a lot of times is also telling us how to do things, how to plan things, how to plan a pattern. So that way there's a lot of cross-learning in our process. But when it comes to the process of the garment factory, the roles are very well defined, like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, so within the development you have some exchange, but when it comes to production, you like have your specialisms.
Yeah, more than time efficiency, it's like we are trying to change a system. So the systematic approach requires a lot of patience. So what we've seen is that over the last 4 years, the clients of the garment factory have started to demand upcycled products and upcycled textiles, and have started to consider like what they do is when we are producing for them, they'll tell us to keep the waste aside, and then they'll tell us as IRO what to make out of it. So there's this cross consciousness that has also transpired through the system. And that's been very gratifying to see, honestly, that it's not just limited to us and our beliefs. It's something that everyone actually believes in their core. It's just someone needs to enable it for them and provide that solution.
Yeah, so in a sense, the whole IRO brand is an embedded problem solver within a factory, as well as being a standalone brand.
Yes, and I think what that has been able to do is what I expected was a lot of resistance, but there's been a lot of acceptance of what I expected was a lot of resistance, but there's been a lot of acceptance of what we do and how we do it, and a lot of curiosity around it as well, but a lot of appreciation as well. So if that weren't there, it would have been very difficult to continue on to do what we are doing.
Any other questions? We've just got a few minutes left. We've got 10 minutes left. So last chance for questions from the audience. Oh, Bhavya, I've just lost your video. Ah, there we go.
Yeah, I had a question just about this format, Bhavya, of making garments as a kit. Is it, I know this is the first time you've done it, and I love the way that you've done it in such a playful way as a kind of jigsaw puzzle. And I was wondering if it's something that you will think about developing further. And if you do think it's a good way to make kind of well-made quality clothes at a more affordable price, because I know there's a criticism a lot of the time around the sustainable fashion industry as being for those privileged enough to be able to afford it. Is this your answer to that? And yeah, do you think this is something that you can continue going forward?
Definitely. I definitely feel this is what we'll continue to keep on doing and keep on exploring. What I feel personally is that exclusivity and inclusivity is presented as this false dichotomy. It's always said that if you're making something, it needs to be exclusive. However, I feel it can be exclusive and it can be democratic at the same time. And that's where it came from, to say that sustainability or upcycling or upcycled fashion is not exclusive. You can literally do it at your home if you have access. And of course, it is still limiting to a certain circle where people have access to laptops and knowledge and interest and curiosity. But it is including more and more people. And that's what I see, that once I wanted to be here, now that I can see this, maybe I can see far ahead and see how can I include more people in this system. So hopefully, yes, it's to say that fashion can be democratic and fashion can be exclusive at the same time.
Yeah, no, I think this is it's such a great way forward. And I think also when you actually make something yourself, it really makes you understand what has gone into that piece of clothing, and you value the time that has gone into it. If it's your own time, more in a way than if it's somebody else's time that you can't see. Yeah.
Also, just displaying how much time goes into making one garment. Right now, as Sitaramji is making one garment, I mean, it is also communicative that clothes shouldn't be treated as something that can be discarded so easily. So I'm also grateful that Fashion Open Studio is taking this initiative to showcase and give us the space to showcase.
No, I think it's such an important message, because I think increasingly, people just don't understand the time that goes into making something, and it gets completely left out of the equation. I mean, both from when you're buying clothes, but also in the system where there's, where buyers don't and purchasing practices don't allow for time spent actually making something. They barely allow for the materials. So I think this is really valuable in educating people around these matters. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, and I agree with that, because the customers of the garment factory would say things like, can you make this for $15 because the next person can make it for $10, but we like your quality, so we've come to you with $15. But if this is understood by them, that it's not a trade of it's not about reducing time, because when you reduce time, you reduce skill. It's about making sure, as Ursula said, there's longevity in each garment.
We have a question from Regina in the chat. Regina, do you want to ask out loud? Would you like me to read it from the chat? We can do either. Maybe I'll read it. Regina asks, are there specific rules for zero waste processes and manufacturing?
I wouldn't say there are rules, there are limitations. And for me, what really drives creativity are those limitations. Like, you can work within certain colors, you can work, you have to come up with the width of the fabric, and everything needs to be used. But for me, all of this really drives creativity. Otherwise, without limitations, I don't see that, for me, on a very personal level, driving creativity for me.
Yeah, I suppose in a sense what you're saying, Bhavya, is that it's a principle rather than a set of rules to comply with.
Yes.
Okay, well, we have just a few more minutes.
Yeah, the jacket is almost done. We'll just drape it on the mannequin.
Wonderful. I've got your spotlit both on the machine and also in the studio. So if you need to move back over, then we've got that space as well to show things.
Okay.
So while Bhavya and the team are doing that, I'm gonna just make sure that we say all the thank yous that we need to say. a huge thank you to our colleagues at British Council and British Council India for making this programme possible and working with us so collaboratively in challenging times, and also to the team at Fashion Revolution India, Suki and Alia and all of the team who've been huge supporters of Fashion Open Studio and bringing it to India and involving Indian designers in the cohort since the beginning. A thank you to Darshana and Kunal from Lakme Fashion Week, Sustainable Fashion Day at Lakme Fashion Week, who have been involved in the campaign in India to share Bhavya's work and her practice. And a big thank you to the Fashion Open Studio team, Nikki, who has project managed, Tamsin, who curates, and Ursula, who is our creative director, who we heard from earlier, and to Beatrice, who works with us on social media, to Maria and Emily as well, getting everyone in this time. So if you're in Glasgow, please join us between the 5th and the 7th. We'll be in 9 different locations, showcasing the solutions that the 9 designers we've been working with have come up with and shared. So it'll be a hybrid event. You'll be able to get involved hands-on, but also to see the films and videos and live recordings of events that have been taking place in the lead up to COP. We have 2 further online events, one with Boris Studio from Nepal, who are amazing eco dyers working with leaves and flowers and all sorts of amazing flora and fauna. Well, flora, less fauna. And with Toton on Friday, who are design brand based in Jakarta, who are working with denim offcut waste from factories in Jakarta, and also amazing community of hand weavers from West Java. So without further ado, I think we'll look at the fruits of the IRO team's labour. It's amazing jigsaw puzzle, zero waste garment. If anyone would like to make this at home, you've all been sent in the reminder email for this event, and we'll follow up again as well, the manual, which means you can make it from fabrics at home. If you would like to purchase IRO fabric and the kit itself all ready to go, then you can visit Ikave. I posted the link before, but I'll just repost it again. So if you would like to make your own IRO, please do head there and you can buy a kit for delivery. So yeah.
I would
And
just
over
like
to
to say
Bhavya for last
thanks a
word.
lot, Tamsin. Thank you so much, Neve, for all your patience and understanding. And it's been so fun for us designing these kits, and we are just looking forward to how people make these kits their own. And thanks a lot to the whole Fashion Revolution team, Ursula, Suki, Alia, who've been with us throughout. Thanks to the team behind IRO, Rakeshji, Sitaramji, but also all the people who helped us make these kits, and all the weavers, Jaiprakash Khabra and Sunita Deviji and Bhavya and Aditi and Malvika, who's designed the shoes for this particular collection. So I just wanted to say thanks to everyone.
And of course, the last thank you is that we should make is to Bhavya for her energy and commitment and imagination. We're so excited to get our hands on some of these kits. I think me and Tamsin have already put in our orders to be able to make them together and to be part of the IRO movement. So thank you, everyone, all of our guests for joining today. It's been wonderful to have you. Thank you to everyone who asked questions. It's been a really lovely interactive event. So we look forward to seeing some of you maybe on Thursday with Boris Studio and on Friday with Toton, and hopefully, fingers crossed, in Glasgow as well. So thank you so much. I'm going to